So here I'm just cutting up the wood for a mirror that I'm going to be making. This is a piece of driftwood I found at the beach. I'm using a old saw here because you don't want to be sawing into driftwood. Anything that's been in the sea is going to have probably got stones in it. Also it's going to have a lot of sand and grit embedded in the surface, which will blunt any tool quite quickly. So using a big square like that just helps get a good reference on an uneven surface. Here I've rigged up a bit of a jig to hold the workpiece. I've got two pieces screwed across each end to hold the workpiece flat. Then I've clamped a fence across both pieces to then route my rebate that the mirror will sit in. I'm using a bit with a guide bearing on, and that's running against the fence. Here I am routing out the rebates for the other two sides of the mirror. I've screwed a piece of wood in to the first rebates that I ran. That's keeping them flat and parallel. From here I decide to stop routing and just hog out the waste quickly with a chisel. Take it down to within about 5mm of my finish, so I can come back and route the rest with much less wear to the router bit. Now I can just move the jig along and take passes off to get this rebate down to the level it needs to be. Here I'm just cleaning up with a chisel all the bits I missed and squaring off the edges. And here's another bit of wood that I'm routing out just to this rebate's actually going to be what creates the space for the mirror to be a mirror. Here's another rebate, and this time I'm using the fence to run the rebate along here, and this is actually a Porter cable router, and the fence is fantastic. It's got a little micro adjusting wheel on it, which you can dial your fence into, well, exacto measuremento. Now I'm just priming the the wood here, it's always good to put primer on, I find. You just get a better adhesion with the top layer of paint, and also you can get this sort of primer's quite a high build primer, so sanding it down gets you a really nice flat surface. I'm gluing up now, and I'm using an expanding polyurethane glue. It's actually Gorilla Glue, and they do some pretty good products actually, Gorilla Glue. I'm not sure if they're anything to do with Tight Bond. They use the same bottles on their PVA, but yeah, the glue's good. Anyway, that was just a small bottle that I was using up. And then I run some PVA on the leading edge. I don't like to get the expanding polyurethane glues too close to the edges if I can help it, only because it can be a bit of a pain to clean up. I bought the mirror for this project off of Facebook Marketplace for, I think I got it for £10, and that piece of wood there is actually the backing plate, so by putting that in there I know that when I clamp it up it's going to be square and that the mirror's going to fit as well. Just use a chisel to clean up the polyurethane that's squeezed out. I'm just trimming the bottom of the mirror now, and well, it could be the top, I'm not sure yet. I'm using a track that I made for my circular saw. It's worth having one of these, they're really easy to make. You just screw one bit of wood to another bit of wood, make sure it's straight, cut through the piece of ply that you're screwed onto, and then you can cut other bits of wood straight. For this first coat of finish I'm going to be mixing boiled linseed oil with pure turpentine. I'm going to mix it 50-50 to get it nice and thin. It soaks into the wood a lot quicker and also dries quicker when you do it this thin. The next coats after this will be more like a 70% oil to 30% turpentine. When the oil's this thin you sometimes don't even need to wipe the excess off, but if there is any, just wipe it off after about 20 minutes. And just add some extra linseed oil to your mix to increase the ratio up to about 70%. And remember to wipe off the excess after 20 minutes. I'm going over the top of the linseed oil finish with an oil-based varnish just to give it that extra protection. It'll also give a slightly glossy finish to the wood. Use oil-based varnishes if you're going over oil. Water-based polyurethane can pose problems. Safety is very important, so always wear your ear defenders and eye protection. I'm just cutting the backboard here for my for the mirror, and I've been wanting to take this bit of ceiling out for a while because there's a roof light above it, and I like to recycle things. Now I'm just making some brackets, laying them out on a piece of stainless steel here. I could have bought these for probably less than £1, but it's fun making stuff. I file the edges nice and smooth and down to the lines, also round the corners off. I then just use a vernier here to mark out where my holes are going to be and where my bend lines are going to be. I've been practicing my kung fu recently, really helping with my centre punching technique. Now I'm just drilling the holes and then countersinking them. I use the countersink to clean off the burr on the back of the hole as well, and here I'm just using a hammer that I got from a car boot, and I think it's a proper metal finishing doodah. That's definitely not a metal finishing tool, but it worked. Now I'm just setting out the increments and with a hacksaw just to relieve the slot, and then using a triangular file just to stick my grooves in. This is, you'll see, these are going to be where the screw can sit, so you can adjust where your mirror hangs. And there's the teeth. You can imagine how it works, I imagine. And now just stick some paint on. This is actually etch primer. Now I'm just marking out where the brackets are going to go. I find the centre, and then mark it out with a pencil, get my parallel lines off of the straight edges there, and then I go round the bracket with a Stanley knife. I then start chiseling it out. I chop it in much the same way as I'd do a door hinge. Just go along, go down to your depth, and then come back afterwards and just swipe your chisel across it, and it takes all the chips off. Then just come in afterwards and clean up your corners. Then I just pilot the holes for the bracket and screw them in with some normal wood screws. Here I'm doing the same for the bracket on the top so that it can be hung in a portrait orientation, and I've got to cut down some of my screws because I didn't have any small enough. Now I carefully drop the glass in and then stick my bit of sealing on top. I just tack the backboard in using some small nails, and I switch now to using a piece of laminated paper to stop myself marring the wood as I slide the hammer over it. I just wipe some glass cleaner over the mirror, and voila, marvelling the delights of my work. For £10 mirror off Facebook Marketplace, came out alright. The biggest lesson I learnt with this build was to check the mirror doesn't have a scratch in it, like that. What a twat.